right there. The intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again strike down every living creature as I have done. Summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. This sounds just like the same command, and it is the same command given to Adam and Eve. In 1. The fear of you, here's where it differs from Adam though, the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Point in fact, as a kind of an anecdotal description of this, we're having an infestation of geckos in our home. They just show up everywhere. Every time I come down there, the girls are yelling, oh, there's another gecko. And those things, you get near it and they just start scattering. Absolute fear and dread. And you have to chase these things down for the next 30 minutes so that your daughter doesn't come over and kick you in the shins for not getting it out. So, so it's still impactful today. Verse 3 of chapter 9. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat the flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it. Will require him. For his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Verse 6. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. Remember, image has two connotations that we serve as image bearers. We serve as the evidence of God's creation, and that as followers of Christ, we also serve as his representatives bearing the image of Christ. Verse 7. And you, being fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off from the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Forgive me. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring the clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember everything. I will remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, verse 17, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. So that's the covenant of Noah, right? So, quick observations. What were some of the elements that were described? What were some of the requirements, descriptions, off the top of your head, what do you remember from that passage?
Rainbow.
The rainbow as a sign of the covenant. What else? Anything else that just pops to mind? Post-flood, there was a flood, right? So we're coming out of the flood, we're coming after that. How many families were on the earth at this point? Families were on the earth at this point? What? Noah and his family, right? All right, cool. So Is it biblically accurate to say that no matter where we come from in the world, we're all related through Noah? Yes, we are. So, okay. Of a distant generation, yeah. Great times, whatever. Grandpa, Noah. Right? So, okay, so what else did you observe? Anything pop out? Anything else of interest pop out to you? Going to your notes page, right? You have the blanks on the inside of your notes page. Let's build out the parts of it. Is the covenant made between between God and Noah? Is this one of rules and regulations and law, or is it one of promise? It is promise, right? So it's matter. Under matter, you can write promise. Because God is making a promise to Noah. If it's a promise from God to Noah, what is our requirement? Is there something we have to obey, or is it just something we receive and we acknowledge? We receive, thank you. We will receive, right? So, it's a promise that participants must receive as we go through. So do we still receive the same promise today that was given to Noah at his time, however many thousands of years ago that was? Defend that from the scriptures. Do we receive the same promise today that was promised to Noah? Is it still current and applicable today just as it was at the time of Noah? The promise given to Noah. What was the promise given to Noah? And okay, now go to either 16 or 17. Key term? Key term is everlasting, right? So with you and the descendants that come out of you, everlasting, so that if he's saying it's descendants come out of you, that all humanity is a descendant from Noah and his children, is the promise still applicable today? The promise given to Noah, is it applicable today? Yeah. So it's the same today. So this is the part 2 of the creation covenants. So between Adam to Noah. So bear the weight? No, God bears the weight, right? He's saying, I will do this, I will abide by this, and guess what? So God bears the sanction. So God bears the sanction or the weight of the covenant, which, if it's promised, we can only receive it, and God does all the work. That makes it a covenant of grace or works. Good. All right, so it's a covenant of grace. So we're building that out. So let's go down to that second row under stipulation or response. In receiving that, there is a couple of things that God does say. What does God tell Noah and his family to do? Verses 1 and 2. What are some of the things that God tells Noah to do? Apply, right. So, fruitful and fill, right? Fill the earth. Be fruitful, multiply. Fruitful. 1L, 2Ls. Fruitful, 1L, 2Ls. 1L. That looks closer to it.
In your notes here, as you're writing, where are we? I get a little confused.
So we're right here.
Oh, in the restitution.
Yeah, restipulation just means response, right? So yeah, so here's your 4 columns.
I see.
Yes, sir?
Oh, you just put the, okay, so in the prompt, I see.
There you go. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very good. All right, so it says to be fruitful, to fill the earth. What else does he say to do? Is it repeated? It's in verse 1, but is it repeated here later on in the passage? Yes, in which verse? 7. Very good. Excellent. So he repeats it in verse 1 and 7. So when God, what I'm telling you to do, be fruitful, here's some other stuff, and be fruitful, right? Fill the earth. It's kind of like when you're doing a counseling or a employee evaluation. Hey, here's some of the good things you've done. Here's some of the things we want to correct. But you know what? You've been doing really good at this, right? So you get that positive sandwich. We have a good thing. It's like, hey, here's a correction. Here's a bad thing. Sometimes we do that with our kids too, right? So here's what I require of you, and go have some more kids. Right? Right? So be fruitful and fill the earth. What does it say will be the nature of creation in verse 2 that would be different than that of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? Say again? It does not say take dominion. So it no longer says dominion, but so it tells them to do what with the earth? Well, actually, we're going to come back to that. We'll hold there because that's going to be. I don't want to skip this one, but that's the next part. So it does not include. So observation of the idea of dominion or subduing. But what does it say? What is the relationship of creation to humanity? Verse 2.
It says they're going to be fearful, but it says they're delivered into your hand.
Right. So, same, right? So, no. How do we know that? Defend that from Scripture. What was one of the things that Adam had to do that was one of Adam's responsibilities? Say again? He had to name the animals. And the Scriptures say they all came before him. They kind of went in front of him. So was there fear and dread of the animals to Adam? No. All right? So he's saying now there will be fear and dread. The implied meaning is that there wasn't before, right? So there's fear and dread into your hand. Is that correct? So prior to this, what was given as consumables and food to humanity? So now it's every living, moving thing. Previous to this injunction, plants. Seeds, nuts, berries. They were vegans to the nth degree. But God said, I give you everything into your hand to eat. Yes, because steak is delicious. Eat pig and camel. What are the little... If we only take into account what's going on at this point in history, is all this edible? Yeah. You get down in Louisiana, you start getting squirrel stew. That's disgusting. But they eat squirrel stew. That's right in your eyes, isn't it? Is it the other? It's up there. Oh, I'm so sorry. So all living things are given to. So if all living things are given into their hands for consumables, for eating. They are to fill and multiply throughout the earth. Nature has now become what to Noah, his sons, and their descendants? What do we need to build a building? We need a foundation, right? We need materials, and we need labor, right? So what do we call all that together? Resources. All of nature becomes a resource to the expansion of human development and society and cultural expansion from Noah on. That nature itself is now a resource to humanity. Rather than, whereas Adam and Eve were supposed to live in harmony with and expand that harmony out of Eden and on, now the earth has now become a resource for the sake of human expansion. Resource. And then we have one final thing that was given to Noah. It's in verse 6. Well, it's 5 going into 6. What is now being explicitly required of, hello, what is now being explicitly required of Noah that God felt the need to say? A reckoning for the life. Correct. So let's go backwards for a second. When Cain killed Abel, was Cain killed? No, what was Cain's punishment? Banishment, essentially, right? Banishment. And he had a mark saying, hey, we're going to do this. We go a little bit further, a couple of chapters later. I think it's not Laban. Laman. Is it Laman or Laban? He said that I killed 2 men and he's saying, like, if Cain isn't being judged, I'll be judged 7 times or 77 times more. Lamech. Thank you. But he wasn't killed either, right? The scriptures don't say that he was killed. So we can make an assumption that he continued on with life. So can we make an assumption from what is now being commanded in Genesis 9 and what we saw in evidence of the preceding chapters? Was capital punishment an institution before this time? Capital punishment meaning death penalty? No.
But Cain did say, if someone finds me, they're going to kill me.
Right. Didn't say that murder didn't happen, because obviously murder happened, but in the application of justice, was capital punishment imposed? It does not seem so. But it does seem to be imposed at this point in Genesis chapter 9. So there, verse 6, right? Correct. In verse 6, there seems to be an imposition. So there's a sense of an establishment of justice. Remember if we go back to about 8:20, 8:21, 22 of Genesis, why did God destroy all the earth? It was wicked, corruption, filled their hearts. Everything they did was everything that they conceived of and wanted to do, and it was all evil. So I would imagine there was lots of what we would call crime, murder, and all this kind of stuff going on all over the place, right? Give me mine, and what's yours is mine, and I want more, right? And so, but to such a degree that God said, we just got to start this over. The scriptures say that Noah was a righteous man. Now, I'm very curious. I think that's relative within the greater society that was going on. But God said, hey, and that I can continue on and stuff. So let me lead you through a couple of questions here. What was the promise and hope given to Eve at the curse in Genesis chapter 3. She would bear the seed, that seed of redemption, and specifically the scriptures say that the serpent will bruise his heel and he will bruise the head of the serpent, right? So there was a promise given that there will be a descendant that comes out of Eve that will bring about redemption and restoration. There seemed to be such a danger in the world that God saw a need to basically do a hard reboot, right? And so if we take those two thoughts, put into your own words, what was God attempting? What was God doing? Not attempting. What was God doing in this process? Can God lie? Will God ever fail in something he says he will do? No. So then why do you think the flood took place? Promise was given to Eve to give her a seed that would bring about restoration. The world was terrible, beyond description. Reset in order to preserve a family. Why? Yes, we definitely see God's application that he is the creator, ruler, sustainer, and maintainer of creation. That in the end, he truly is king of creation, right? But he's made a promise. He wants to ensure that promise is kept. And so he has to restart with a family in order to maintain, to preserve the seed of the woman that he might come in generations to come later. As we see as Paul's description, Galatians or Ephesians, I think it's Galatians, that it says the seed, not the seeds, but the seed of the woman. And Paul makes it clear that the scriptures are referring to Christ as when God says the seed in the first chapters of Genesis. All right, so under sanction, God is the one that bears the weight of this. And in part of his bearing the weight of this promise given to Noah is to sustain and preserve humanity for the sake of the seed. So to sustain and preserve humanity, man, for the seed of the woman. So in God's requirement, the sanction that God has imposed upon himself, part of that to carrying this promise is to preserve a line in order that Jesus might come. We've already said that the form of this covenant given to Noah is one of grace, that we can only receive it. God bears the weight of it. And so, but in that grace, we are to do what? Verses 1 and 7 again. We are to be fruitful, fill the earth, multiply. If you are filling the earth, you are multiplying, having kids, passing down tradition, passing down expectations, what do we call that in various societies? And different societies have different practices, right? So if I go to Tokyo, it's going to look one way. If I go to Honolulu, interactions between adults and kids are going to look different. If I go to Central Texas, they're going to look different. If I go here, what is the term we use for almost every elder, male and female, whether they're related to us or not? Auntie and uncle, right? If I go over to Dallas, Texas, and I'm walking down the mall and right? That's just not part of that culture. So in filling and expanding and being fruitful throughout the earth, we are producing and expanding human culture throughout creation. Make sense? All right, so there's, what are we doing? Let's do some compare contrast. So Noah received a renewed commission to fill the earth. Is that similar to Adam? Yes, right? And we already noted what are the differences. Adam was told to do what, and versus what, actually, the second half in your little notes down here, first gray box, down here in the second half of your pages. It says the covenant of Adam, the covenant of work that was made with Adam versus what were the similarities between. There's three terms he repeated, that God repeated to both men. What was said to Adam but not said to Noah? We said that just a couple minutes ago. Is to subdue and rule, right? Adam was told to subdue the earth and rule it. Noah said that they were supposed to fill the earth, but the relationship between humanity and the rest of creation is characterized by what? Verse 2 of chapter 9. Fear and dread, right? So fear and dread. Speak up. I know you know it. So fear and dread, right? So verse 9. Okay, so let's look at another one. Adam is told to what? What is he supposed to do with Eden? Say again? I just couldn't. What is Adam supposed to do with Eden, the Garden of Eden? Subdue it, care for it, preserve it. Assumably expand its borders, make it larger. For what was the one thing that was unique about the Garden of Eden that is not true about nature today? What did Adam do with God in the cool of the day? He fellowshiped. Said he walked with him in the cool of the day, right? That it was a place that God and humanity could come and commune together. They could have a relationship. Can we do that in that intimate way of Adam and God? Can we do that out here on the street, out here in what we call paradise of Hawaii? No, we don't get to walk with God in the cool of the day any longer. Why is that? Correct, because of sin has entered the world. Where did I write that down? I liked this. This is by John Oswalt from a commentary it's called New National Commentary of the Old Testament. Remember, we've referenced a couple times the verse Isaiah 64, 5 and 6, that even our most righteous deeds are the same as what? Even our best deeds are filthy rags, right? So if you look at NIV, a couple other ones, we're going to say filthy rags. If we look at ESV, it uses the term of corrupted garments or polluted garments, I think it uses. We're all adults here. What garment is because let's be frank, Isaiah was kind of a brash fellow. In his writing, what corrupted garment or filthy rag is Isaiah referring to? Say again? I think you're saying it. I just want to hear you. Yeah, menstrual rags, right? He's talking about maxi pads or always pads, things that have no other purpose than to be thrown away, right? So John Oswald, he says that sin is not a behavioral dysfunction. Sin is not a behavioral dysfunction. It is an offense against the nature of creation that contaminates and destroys the human spirit, just as disease destroys the body. Sin is a disease that has tainted creation, that has tainted humanity. What is the only inoculation, the only cure for that disease? What is the only cure for the disease of sin? Yes, Christ's sacrifice on the cross. And our response to that being that of faith. That sin, this is why I typically will describe sin as more like a cancerous infection than it is a disobedient child. That's just the symptoms that are exhibited, but the real problem is the sin that is the sin that has corrupted and tainted. So if we look at your compare and contrast, look at line number 2, the white boxes, the second row. Adam is told to build and expand paradise. He is to produce a culture of making God known and glorified in harmony with creation. So that he is supposed to expand paradise, to make God known, and to be in harmony with the rest of creation. If we move just to the right, Noah is told human culture and civilization, taking nature as a resource, as an advantage in order to make that happen. Third line, the covenant work depended on whom? What did that covenant of creation depend on? Who bore the weight of that covenant? Adam did. So God's requirements of humanity and Adam, to Adam, and this Adam representing all humanity and anybody that would come from him, humanity, we bore the weight of that obedience, was to fill the earth, subdue it, and don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Is there a mandate and a commission given to Noah? So if we look at chapter 9, verses 1 through 6, does God give Noah instructions? We've said a lot of them already. Actually, said all of them already. So did he give him instructions of how to live in society? Yeah. Fill, be fruitful, multiply. All the animals are given to you as food. Eat some meat. They're going to be scared of you. Right? So that he is given a covenant of grace. It's a promise of God, and it depends entirely upon God, but he has a responsibility to expand that culture. So he's a mandate and commission, but the maintenance of that commission relies entirely upon God, thus making it a With that said, are the effects of Adam's failure still affecting us today? Yes, right? However many thousands of years ago that was, it still affects us today. Is the promise given to Noah still affecting us today? Yes, it is. So here's the nature of these two, here's how these two work together, and this is how we'll close out. That even though a promise was given to Adam and to keep his part of the bargain, and thus, in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die, that there is a separation between God and humanity, that still affects us today, that God, seeing all the world as corrupt as it was, still wanted to preserve that seed so he could fulfill the promise that he had given to the serpent, but in the promise he had given to Eve in that process, that you will bear a seed, and that seed will bruise the serpent's head, and the serpent will bruise his heel. To preserve that promise, God still destroyed the world and move on. So that the covenant made with Adam and the covenant made with Noah are part A, part B. They have to work together, but they are a covenant of creation that impacts all peoples, of all nations, of all cultures, of all upbringings. It's not until after this, as we get into chapters 11 and 12, that we interact with Abraham and we get a bit more specific to a particular people group. Okay? So, what's neat about these first two covenants is that they are universal. And the work of the covenant with Noah, so this covenant of grace that goes with Noah, is to preserve and protect humanity. It says so let's think about it. If we take Romans, we are running out of time. We'll take that another day. It is preserve and protect. That the nature, what we can learn from God in this is that even though there is such evil in the world, I still have a purpose and a goal that I want to accomplish. So I need to preserve, I need to exude some mercy, I need to just demonstrate some compassion on this guy that God describes as righteous, and I will say that's relative to the rest of society around him, that we pick up that same theme in Matthew chapter 4, verse 44 and 45, where Jesus says, "But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. He makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust." We have the imposition of a $5 phrase that we use today called common grace. That God demonstrates a measure of grace and mercy to all, despite whether they respond to him in faith or not. Samuel Renahan says this about Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, simply, if we translate, it means the preacher. That's all it means. Ecclesiastes, there's an Old Testament book of less poetry, but is definitely poetic. But it's called Ecclesiastes or Kohelet, depending on. It just means the preacher. But Ecclesiastes describes the life in this kingdom as life under the sun. Things don't work right. The system is broken. Hard work doesn't always pay off. And sometimes laziness pays off. But everyone dies. Everyone is cursed. And everyone lives through difficulties of success and failure, unpredictable to mankind. Our obligation as the preacher or the writer of Ecclesiastes concludes is to simply fear God, to acknowledge the King of our common covenant kingdom, and to keep his commandments. We can do no more than very close to it. If we may bleed into next week, but the key phrase, the key theme out of 1 Peter is that suffering, trials, and tribulations are part and parcel with us. We have a fallen creation, thanks to Adam. We have a fallen creation that is tainted by evil, that is tainted by sin. It is ill. And so when those who have been brought to life, those who are Christians, those who have been relieved of the guilt of that sin, we're going to be in conflict with the rest of creation until creation is redeemed and renewed. As we get to the end of the book of Revelation, that there is a new heaven and a new earth, and God's dwelling is again finally with man, as we look to Revelation 22. So there's going to be an inherent conflict that takes place here. And the writer of Ecclesiastes is telling us this. Jesus is telling us the same. 5, and that's all of Peter's point in his first epistle in 1 Peter to the church. So as you face the difficulties of your life, whatever they may be, in whatever context that you exist, God is aware of that. He still asks of you to remain faithful, to trust Him, to obey. Even when you don't understand why, Lord, we know you've got it. We leave it in your hand. You have a hold of this, because I know you've given a promise that you preserve your people in order that you and your Son will be glorified. Yeah? So let's go with that. That will conclude our discussion on Noah. There's lots more details, but that gives us a good overview of how Noah works. All right? Sound good? Next week we'll get into Abraham. If you want to read ahead, start getting to Genesis chapter 12 and go on. Look at that first interaction with Abraham as he is being called out of Chaldea up to Haran and then led over to the promised land. So let us pray, and then we'll take a quick break, and we'll get started back with the service here shortly. Great God in heaven, Lord, we thank you for your scriptures. We thank you for the examination of your word. We ask for your grace and your mercy. We ask that you would embed this in our hearts. Help us to additionally take what was true then and knowing how things translate through the centuries, how it impacts us and can help to explain the nature of evil today. Lord, we thank you so very much for this time that we have together. In your